We are at the Car Real Estate office and we're sitting down with Ginger to kind of discuss some real estate tidbits that you guys have, experienced throughout the years.
When I first started with Dilek, had just, finished the test or whatever that was, there was another realtor here that we all absolutely loved.
Kelly Black, you're going to come on here soon.
Can we shout her out?
Yeah,
Kelly Black.
shout out
And
Kelly.
she was thorough and detail-oriented, and she did a sort of a sheet for first-time home buyers, which I said to Dilek when we were sitting down, I was like, wow, I wonder where that sheet is. And Dilek looks at me and goes, there's 3 parts. And I'm like, oh yeah, Dilek probably could write the sheet. Dilek probably wrote the sheet.
No. Well, there's so many tidbits under so many different subjects. So real estate is vast.
I was talking to a 3rd or 4th time home buyer last week, and they didn't realize some of these things.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's very fascinating, the process. So let's start with your home is under contract.
Your home is under contract.
Okay.
So the tidbits are financing, inspections, and appraisal and clear title.
Right. I told Dilek before we started the camera that, and this is going to be believed, but I find expertise very arousing. It's just like when somebody really knows their, then I'm like, whoa.
Get all hot and
bothered. It's like, oh my gosh, there's nothing quite as heady as expertise, because you like to be guided by someone that you feel like. My mother used to say, well, somebody's got to drive the wagon. And so, like you'd be driving my wagon.
Well, it takes a whole team effort. So, So, a buyer needs to make sure that their financing is in place before we even start looking. Because then we know what we can afford, because if we're looking at, if we have someone who can only go to $250,000 and we're looking at $500,000 homes, let me just say that it's going to be hard to like a $250,000 home after you've looked at $500,000 home, and you can't afford it. Then it's such a letdown, and I've seen letdowns. So you got to be pre-qualified. That's like the first step. So
and the seller wants to have confidence that the contract you're bringing is backed by real money. It's not just you're not just frivolously.
True.
Because another thing that we talked about that I didn't understand, that I really didn't understand as a new realtor is it's an opportunity lost for a seller to sign a contract. And so you want a very serious buyer to in effect, take your home off the market.
During the whole process, because that's exactly what it is. It's off the market now, which a lot of people don't understand either. That's a tidbit right there. Like they don't realize that when a seller decides to agree on a contract with a buyer, they can't take another contract. The financing contingency typically includes the appraisal, which
the appraised value isn't always the market value.
Exactly.
The market value is what your house will bring in this current market.
Correct.
Which could fluctuate.
Always. Inventory, the number of homes that are on the market versus the number of buyers on the market. It's a market, is completely driven differently. Appraisal values only go off of what homes comparable have closed on in the last 6 months.
Yeah, so it's not as up to date as a market.
And it's very number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. It's very
so the lender hires a middleman to hire the appraisal because the lender's not allowed to have direct contact with an appraiser.
Is that new or is that old?
Well, it's since the 2008.
Okay.
That's what happened. What happens then is we get the appraisal, scheduled. So, and it has to come in, at the appraised value for the lender, not necessarily the buyer. So it depends on the loan that they're getting. So if they have extra money and it doesn't appraise, you can pay more than the appraised value, which I've had happen. Like I've had buyers pay more than
it's like, I love this house, I want this house.
Then we can go in, there's all kinds of loan things that buyers need to look for when they're looking interest rate and closing costs. And then the interest rate combined with the closing costs is called the APR. So then technically they're just supposed to like just compare APRs with lenders, and usually they're pretty close with each other. And then sometimes a buyer has a relationship with a local lender, and that's the only one they're going to work with, and they're not going to go with anyone else, because relationships matter, and they do matter.
And also, one of the very first houses I sold was to a veteran, and he had did he have a VA loan? Then other government underwritten loans.
There's first-time
Right.
home loans, there's
rural
development loans,
Right, and also interesting is not every house qualifies for a government
Correct.
underwritten loan.
Yes. I mean, there's several different government loans, and the appraiser for these government loans, they have to be certified to be able to do that. And then long time ago, the one that sticks out in my brain, and the appraiser said, well, there was a stain on the hardwood floors and wouldn't pass it. And I'm like, what do you do with that? There's nothing you can do with that unless you can try to work with the appraisal to say, please, like we can cut out a piece and put it, but it was kind of, which is rare. That doesn't happen often, but that's just
things like stair railings and
100%.
Right.
You always need a stair railing.
Yeah.
That's like a safety thing. So
Right, a lot of safety things.
Yeah. I have a question.
Okay.
It's kind of a broad question. It's not necessarily about financing, but is it harder to be on the buyer side or the seller side in real estate stuff? Or is it about the same?
For the client or the agent?
You could answer for both you and the client.
So
it was much harder for me to sell my house.
Yeah.
Because I had lived in the same house for 20 years, and it turned out it needed, after inspection, it needed between $25,000 and $30,000 worth of improvements, which I did.
And you don't know that that's going to happen when you go under contract. So you're already agreed on a price.
Gillette actually was my agent, and she had suggested that I get an inspection. Don't look at it. Don't look smug.
No, I'm not.
She had said, "Oh my God, this is her smug face."
No.
So she had suggested that I get an inspection, so
But
that
most
she would
people
know.
don't. I always try to remember to say, try to get an inspection before you put your house on the market, because then you know what to expect, right?
And
But
some houses you walk into have the inspection notice out on the counter,
right?
So that it's completely transparent to the new.
And when they're big dollars like that, it's hard. It's hard to.
But I'm interested in your question because I think you do buyers and sellers both really well over the years.
Yeah,
but each one comes with their own set of.
they do.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the complete
Hurdles.
different perspective of things, right?
Right.
Yeah. The difference is like when you have a seller and you've priced it, and if they've listened to your advice of how to price it for that current market, and things can go pretty easily and smoothly. And then sometimes if it takes long because like right now the market is shifting and prices are honestly coming down. Like
That
right
was
now.
Shifty.
I know. But yeah, I mean, things shift and prices are coming down right now. Or if there's multiple offer situations, and sometimes, you list and then you get to guide them through, like, how are we going to determine which buyer are we going to go with? So there's there's pros and cons to both. And then with a buyer, what's really hard is, like, I'm working with a buyer right now, and he hasn't found anything yet. And we've made offers on stuff, but it hasn't come to fruition. So in my brain, and I know they're moving here, like, oh my gosh, if we don't find the perfect place, they're gonna have to settle. I don't want anyone to settle because no one should settle.
Sure.
Then it's like, then you gotta find a rental. Well, that's hard to find a nice rental. In here, because and then my brain starts thinking, where are we going to get a rental? Like, I just start thinking of every potential.
Right.
So it's kind of,
Yeah. Well, and it could be like that one day, and then the next day they find the house they want too. So it's definitely like every day is different, right?
Every day is different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So after you get all your inspections, then you're only allowed to give one request to ask the buyer or seller, like however it's renegotiated, say, okay, we found stuff, And you can either ask for them to fix it, or you can ask for credit to get it and fix it yourself, which is how I always recommend it to be done, because then you can fix it the way you want to fix it.
Right.
Because if you ask the seller to fix it, they can fix it the way they want to fix it.
Mhm.
So that's important to know.
So that's financing, inspection notice,
Appraisal
appraisals.
and clear title, which can be a whole nother subject.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, whole nother subject.
Mhm.
So now the new rule is you have to have, right before closing, 3 days prior to closing, your lender has to send over a closing disclosure, and the seller has to, or the buyer has to agree to it, and then you have 3 days to close. There used to be a time back in real estate before that rule went into effect
Mhm.
that you didn't even have a clear to close till you were at the closing table, which is very stressful
Yeah.
because sellers have moved out, buyer's moving truck is outside waiting to close, and then all of a sudden the lender goes, well, we're not ready to close, which used to, but it doesn't happen
Yeah.
anymore because now we know 3 days in advance
Right.
that it's going to get to closing, which is huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
That's awesome.
That's called
Less
clear to
stressful.
close. It's called clear to close. Do we have a clear to close? Yes, we have
Clear
a
to
clear to
close.
close. Money's at the title company. Yeah.
It has a nice ring to it. Clear to close.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like I learned a lot just sitting
Right.
here.
We're giving you a clear to close.
Yeah,
You-
clear to close. This episode. Yeah.
Yeah, we're letting you close.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, come back next time for our Clear to Close series.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
It's true.
Yeah. Oh, I do like it.